The
No,
Netflix documentary.
I prefer business and funerals better.
You are in luck, Gary, because welcome to Unscripted. It's a show where we try to educate and entertain by covering the news, and then we interview the best and the brightest that LinkedIn has to offer, which is you today, and you, Gary.
Who's your guest?
No, you are.
It's you, baby. And you know why? Because you were the president and CEO of AnswerNet. So thank you for being on. Yeah. This is a big get for us. So you're a big deal.
Thank you for having me, guys. So excited.
I'm excited too. All right. So this is what we're going to do. This is the structure of the show. We're going to interview you. But before we get to that, we do the news. But before we get to that, I don't know if you know this. I know you know this because I sent it to you. But every day in this country is a reason to celebrate. It doesn't have to be Thanksgiving or Easter or Christmas. Every day's a day. Today's day is near and dear to my heart. And as it turns out, yours too. It's National Create a Great Funeral Day. Oh my God. Do I love this idea. But Gary, so
that's a great idea. I like that.
That's a great idea. Yeah. But what's your? Here's the thing about funerals. It's your last goodbye. It's your last party. They're so somber. They're so sad. I'm formerly Catholic, and Catholic funerals are like they just talk. 95% is the same thing. It's all about Jesus, and then you get a eulogy. They put you in the ground and you move on. That's not a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. There should be more. I have ideas. I know, Gary, you have some ideas too. What are they?
Actually, they're not my ideas. They're my wife's ideas. And we can talk later about, are you funnier if you write the jokes or are you funnier if you can deliver them? That's the fight that happens in my household. So my wife wants me to record my own eulogy. Okay. Her dream is that at my funeral, I'll give, 10 minutes of stand-up roasting my own family. Well, I'm pretty sure I don't want to do it quite that way. And, my wife is really technologically challenged. So she walks around the house and you always know that within an hour, my wife is going to press the button on her iPhone, on her watch and find her iPhone. You hear that? So what she really wants is a speaker in her coffin, and in the middle of her funeral, she wants me to press it and have that ring out during her funeral, so people know that she's down there. Now, this morning when I told her about our talk, she said, "Well, I also want to maybe say I found it." But we'll see about
that. That's fantastic.
I don't know that every funeral would lend itself. Like there's some sad funerals, but like grandparents, this is a perfect opportunity to celebrate what they are, right? Because it's sad, but it's not tragic. I think that's the kind of funeral you need. Sad, not tragic.
Right.
So I used to run a business called Muzak, and one of my original boss there was a former jazz drummer out of Chicago named Harry Gale. And at Harry Gale's funeral, his grandkids were playing in music, playing in band, and it was a real celebration of life. I may have gotten drunk at the time, but it was a true celebration of life. And I think that's really the challenge, where somebody has lived like, I'm living the best life, guys. It doesn't get better. I often say when I die, I'm going to come back as me. So I think that if somebody who's truly embraced life, enjoy them, because you shouldn't feel bad. You should feel glad that they got the life they wanted.
Right.
This is what I'm thinking too. Everybody loves the funny obituaries because like every 6 months, somebody writes a funny one. They go in the paper, it goes viral. Everybody's like, this is amazing, but nobody does it. And the best part of every funeral, which is kind of shitty to say, is the eulogy, because it's emotional. Sometimes they're funny, but like that's the thing. So to me, you're going to crank that up. So these are my ideas, right? I think every funeral should have an open bar right off the bat. And then I think you should have an open mic. So people get drunk and then they come tell stories about the person. They're going to be funny. They're going to be emotional. People are going to.
Would the open bar be a credit card that you have as the dead person? Because that'd be even better. Like, just spend the limit.
Right.
There's no limit here.
Yeah, put it on that guy.
Exactly.
And then I was thinking that we could take it a step further, because I'm obsessed with this idea of funeral magicians. So because I think someone needs to liven the party. So here are the tricks. I think he saws the casket in half. That'll be hilarious. Prayer card tricks. And then when people are crying, they do the never-ending handkerchief gag. You know what I mean? So I just think we could liven these things up a little bit.
Yeah.
Grandpa disappear. That'll freak out Grandma just a tad, but
make Grandpa disappear forever. That's a hell of a try. That is very impressive.
Yeah. I was thinking another thing to do if you got some kind of mechanism, whatever, that kind of props you up, like in the middle of whatever, and then you just start waving.
Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah, just that right there.
I think it makes a lot of sense. This all came to me. So my grandfather's brother died, I don't know, like 10 years ago or something. And he was very gay at a time when being gay wasn't like, okay. And he had a boyfriend and stuff, and he died. And we went to a very Catholic funeral, and it was just very like the priest didn't know him. He essentially read the obituary. It was like, yeah, he seemed like a great guy. There should have been show tunes. There should have been, I think he was a gin and tonic drinker. We should have been drinking gin and tonics. You know what I mean? We should got drunk, tell stories about being gay in 1950. That would have been amazing. But instead, it's just like, well, looks like he worked for the Postal Service. That's nice. And then then they put him in the ground. I just think it's a huge missed opportunity.
That's it. Yeah.
And as we get more and more secular, I think we should get away from the religious stuff and have a good time. Instead of, I got a funeral this weekend, it should be, yes, I have a funeral this weekend.
Someone finally died. Thank God.
Someone died. It's going to be a hell of a party.
See, clearly you guys are young, okay? As I get older, more and more people I know are dying, okay? I'm exhausted. I'm in wedding hell. Then I was in bar mitzvah hell when I was younger. Now I'm in wedding hell. I would have to be in funeral hell.
Yeah.
I mean, but if it was an open bar where the dead guy's picking up the tab, at least it's a decent weekend. You get to get blackout drunk at a funeral, and then
But you get blackout drunk and you get in an accident and die. Does that make it a even better funeral?
I would argue that now you have another party to plan.
It's a party from the party.
Right. I'm going to pre-plan my own funeral. It's going to be a lot of DMX. It's going to be a lot of bourbon. And that's all I got so far. But it's you guys are going to have a great time, I guarantee. All right. Maybe we should cover some of the news. All right. Well, it's not exactly not depressing. Okay. This is from the Wall Street Journal. This was one of those long form pieces that they do about a singular subject that you wouldn't think going into it would be interesting, but they always are. So this is logging. Logging is a way of life in Appalachia, but it's hanging on by a thread. There's been a series of shocks that have accelerated the decline of the hardwood industry. Another trade war with China could push it over the edge. So the article goes on to say, the industry was a fixture in this area for decades, but starting in 2018, there was the trade war with China, a collapse due to COVID, China's real estate slump, and a failing and falling U.S. home building situation. So there's 24 sawmills. They're going out of business. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff in here that we're going to discuss, but later on. So with politics aside, you cannot argue that Trump's tariffs with China started a lot of this. China then, because of our tariffs on them, slapped a 25% tax on U.S. lumber. That really affected this area. And then they interviewed a Trump supporter, and he says, I just love this quote, I had to include it. He goes, out here in the real world, this equipment don't run on unicorn piss and fairy dust. We're going to have diesel fuel, and this is the reason he thinks Trump's going to bring down diesel fuel costs, even though we caused this whole thing to begin with. Not in totality, but partly.
Yeah.
The problem with Appalachia, man, first the mining thing. Now lumber, we're not making much anymore. And the problem is not only the jobs, but then if people don't have jobs, they don't go to restaurants. And then if people don't go to restaurants, like I got to get out of here, they leave, then they can't afford schools. So in this area, they're consolidating 4 high schools into 2 high schools. There's a snowball effect when something like the lumber industry begins to crash. And there's many canaries in the coal mine like this, and it's problematic for the United States.
Yeah.
Problematic. Okay, so I'm gonna challenge you on that. All right, and again, I don't care who you think caused it, it could have been caused by the boogeyman, but I ask you, is it problematic? I sit at my desk, and I don't get paper. I get email.
Yep.
I don't get files. I have an inbox. The inbox has the 6 steps of mission planning, which I've kept in my inbox for a long time, and it's got a baseball hat. In case I ever need to put on a baseball hat, right?
Yeah.
I could never do that. When I was a young lawyer, I didn't have that. I didn't have, I'll take off the baseball hat. I want to.
Yeah, you got to show off the hair.
Yeah.
But I don't get paper. The only paper I, handle half the time is I get stuff from home, mail at home, and I bring in to process here. But other than that, very little paper is needed. There's home building is going to go up and down. That's just going to be trend. As long as we have land, we're going to find places to build. So I'm going to say the reality isn't that the industry. Is it bad that the industry is shrinking and it's not going away because we need less paper, we need less wood products? should we be planning for communities? If I'm a community leader, do I want to be planning on, hey, this industry is going to be affected?
Yeah.
How can my neighbors and I prepare for a future? And like, and we're going to talk about later, it's like what's going on in Memphis with XAI, right?
Yep.
So we'll talk. I know we're going to cover that later, but so the question isn't, is the end of a industry bad, or is it that we put our head, we don't like change, so we put our heads in the ground and we don't start thinking ahead. So what does tomorrow look like to us?
Right. 100%. We're so bad at preventative maintenance because we know at some point something like this was going to happen. We did nothing to prevent it. We never do. What I find particularly fascinating, and they don't mention this in the article, but it's just like with population. For years, they would fearmonger about overpopulation. Now they're fear-mongering about population decline, and no one's having more than 2 kids, which means that we're not adding to the population. We're just staying stagnant. For years, we heard about how cross-cutting these forests was horrible. Our desire for wood was destroying the environment, and it is. Now it's the opposite, where we're saying no one needs wood anymore because nobody needs paper and paper-like products. Hardwood, by the way, I didn't know anything about wood, but evidently softwood is for the insides of buildings. What we're talking about hardwood is like flooring, furniture, cabinetry, and trim.
Just keep my
Oh,
mouth
so it's
shut
not
about
it's not the
We're really talking about softwood and hardwood, not without like a Viagra as a sponsor.
yeah.
We're talking about, we're not talking about flaccid wood here.
Yeah.
We're talking about the very hardest wood
Sorry.
that's available.
Yeah.
You're the one who said it was called unscripted. I apologize.
Oh, you can listen. You bring up penises whenever you want to on the show.
Yeah.
We're very pro penis.
Yeah. It was timing.
Yeah.
So good.
And not only do we need less paper because of like printed products, but a lot of people, even when it comes to things like flooring and furniture and cabinetry, are going to like vinyl and composite materials. So to your point, yes, like obviously, if we were doing this story 100 years ago, it would have been like the horses are afraid of the Model T. We do have to adjust, but we never seem to. It has to be a rock bottom thing, and then we freak the fuck out.
So I come from an industry where we're like cockroaches. We have adjusted over and over again, and so I understand. In fact, my whole career has been about that, right? I was in music, and we went from private radio to satellite. I was in wireless, and we brought texting to the U.S., and now I have this call center business. When I bought my first group of companies, most of them weren't even connected to there's a thing called the internet. I don't know if you guys have heard about it. And it's a fad, but none of my offices were connected to that thing. I would share my AOL account with a bunch of my offices. And so the point being that we as a society, and it's not Democrat or Republican, it's we as a society have to continually rethink what our future looks like. What is our kids' future? And as new technologies and new things come aboard, how are they going to affect our way of life?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have a big business in farming and in agriculture, and we work for Farm Journal Media, and we do a lot with them, and they're a great organization, but the numbers of people in the U.S. that work in agriculture continues to shrink.
Yeah, I think only 7% of Americans are farmers or something like that. It's a very small number.
And so I think it's really important for all of us to recognize that the hard part for people is dad and mom, and you read that article and it talked about dad and mom, since the fire was created, this family has been working in the industry. And I think we have to really consider, what does our future look like? What do we want? If we want to be in agriculture and we see the internet and we see that email communication, it's the same thing that's happening to Postal Service. I mean, they've changed the Postal Service, because Amazon, FedEx, DHL, all of these guys, UPS, are doing things differently than the Postal Service. And let me ask, how many letters did you write today? How many letters did you write this month or this year?
Right.
I used to write 50 letters a day. I think I only wrote 49 today. So it's slowly
Love letters.
the numbers are crashing. You're 100% right about all of this too. And part of it too, I mean, so the article starts out with this guy, Alex Zimmerman, who just broke his back because he works in this industry. He chainsaw stuff. He was back on the job in 3 months. Joel Embiid plays basketball 3 days a week and he can't get on the floor.
You know what? Your ability to get back to work is directly related to the number of dollars you have in the bank.
Yeah.
So,
No.
you know,
So Alex
when-
Zimmerman
when-
breaks his back and he's got to get goddamn work.
he's gonna get back. Yeah, his wife is on him.
when he wants, because they have this thing, it's called eating, right?
Mhm.
If a farmer wants to eat, he's got to work.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
Joel Embiid, he isn't going to miss a meal the rest of his life unless he doesn't invest well, right? So that's the difference.
You got to get a chainsaw on his hand. Yeah. Here's the thing too. Americans, that we're so individualistic, we're so capitalistic. The idea that we'd all come together and go, listen, there's going to be an issue with the hardwood. A lot of people are going to be out of work. Can we collectively get together and figure out a solution? Is antithetical to all things America. So I just don't think it'll vary. We're an individualistic, cowboy-esque country. And it's not going to happen. But we're going to continue to learn this lesson the hard way over and over and over. And it's only speeding up. Speaking of which, Elon Musk's XAI is in talks to raise funding, valuing it at $40 billion. This on the heel of OpenAI, which just raised $6.6 billion. They're valued at $157 billion, just so we can wrap our heads around. Sometimes I think we forget there's 1,000 million in a billion. This is a lot of money. It's an inconceivable amount of money. I think a lot of it has to do with the idea that they have to come up with more processing power. But this, how are they? I guess, Gary, you know more about this because you said you recently met with somebody from Elon's XAI team.
I did.
Do you have some insider information? First of all, how do you make this money back?
No,
What are they going
we
to do?
don't have insider information, but you start talking about AI, you start talking about what's going on. First of all, they're building the infrastructure. Think railroads, think internet, think the infrastructure for the future of AI. So what happens now? How many emails a day do I get from people saying, oh, I'm in AI, I do AI. Let me bring AI to your business, okay?
Yeah.
There's a lot of programming and programmers who are out there trying to bring AI. Give me a problem that you need to solve or that you want to bring your costs down, and I'll build you an AI. We as a company build AIs for some large organizations. So I know what that means, but this is something completely different. What we're talking about, what OpenAI is talking about, what XAI is talking about, is taking public domain data. So, and if you think about what Elon's background was, right? Think about the article where it talks about the fact that the Tesla investors are all mad at Elon for bringing their shared resources into XAI. Now, what's really going on here? First of all, Eli was an original investor in OpenAI, and he got pissed off, and he said, "I'm going to open my own." Second, he's taking all that free data, the free data that he bought from X, and he's now putting it into the public domain. He's giving this shit away. It's the whole thing is mind-boggling of what's really going on. And this has been a big problem that most people don't realize. In fact, I was at a conference last week, a call center conference, and one of the salespeople for one of the tech vendors goes, "You got to slow it down." Like, I can slow it down. Gary, you got to slow it down. Sure, I'll just call Elon.
Yeah. Slow it down. Yeah. Ease it up.
But here's what's going on.
Yeah.
OpenAI and ChatGPT,
GPT,
whatever it is. Yeah, it's easy for me to say. That stuff is taking your data, all that free data. We don't pay for Facebook. We don't pay for X. We don't pay for Instagram. We don't pay for TikTok. We don't pay for YouTube. All of this personal information, all of this information about business, about and they're collecting it and they're sharing it. Now, some people would say it's the democratization of data.
Yeah.
Some people would say it's the end of privacy. But what you're seeing is the same thing that happened. So back in the 1800s, they built the railroads. They went out, they raised money, they built the railroads. Everybody said they overbuilt the railroads, and guess what? Ultimately, the demand met the railroads. Then it was the internet. Everybody was out there spending millions and millions of dollars. And it's interesting. In 1995, John Sedgmore, the head of UNET, had a speech where he said, bandwidth is the currency of the future. Well, now what Elon is in that article is talking about is the currency of the future is computing power.
Yeah.
Moore's law, but Moore's law is a thing that says computing power doubles every 18 months. Now all of a sudden, the need for it, it's like drugs. It's like heroin, right?
Yeah.
The more we get, the faster these things get, the more we want.
It's fascinating too, because people really freak out about this whole like right to privacy thing. And if you're putting it on the internet, I think you lose your right to the privacy. Second of all right, so they have all my information. You know what they're going to do with it, at least under my understanding, is try to sell me shit that they think I like. That's not really offensive to me. You know, okay, that's fine. Try to sell me stuff. As a matter of fact, I like buying stuff, and people won't admit that they do too. This is why we spend our money on things, because we get a momentary dopamine hit when we spend our money on shit that we think we like. So like I don't know what I'm doing in my life where they could take my information and do something evil with it. They could steal my identity, blah, blah, blah. But like, I don't know. The right to privacy thing is you're putting your pictures out there. You're putting your name out there. You're putting
knowingly you're putting it out there. Like,
right.
It's not password protected, you know?
No.
It's out there, right?
Like, here, have my information. They're like, oh, you have my information? You fucking gave it to me.
And that's right. And now I want you to understand what's going on. ChatGPT is sitting in your computer. It's sitting there on the internet, and it's waiting for you. And it's saying, come here. I'll give you better than what you have. I heard a bunch of people at this conference say, well, I take my marketing materials and I run it through ChatGPT. Well, now anybody who asks about the same thing, ChatGPT is going to say, if I like that marketing material better, I'm just going to add it to this. So what it does is it creates a massive middle, a middle of the road. And then there are the knuckleheads. So there have been all kinds of articles about lawyers who write briefs using AI, and the AI has fake cases in it because they're sitting on the internet as explanations of things. And it's it's completely insane, because then they research the cases, and the judge's law clerk says this is a real case, not a real site. But the problem is here is they're taking all of this data. I'm a little older than you guys. So when I was in school, the goal was to learn how to go into the library. That's this place with books, if you guys don't know. And go into the library and find the 3 sources that talk about a subject, and then try to make up something from those 3 sources. Today, if I'm a young person, I'm overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed by the volume of information, by how it's coming in, having to learn how to understand, Eric, we talked about it over email before, how to understand the political point of view and the effect of that view on somebody's work, on somebody's ideas. And that, and forget about politics, okay? The amplification of extreme voices is just, it's overwhelming, and it sucks, right? I mean, it just is. So as we think about what's going on with this money, what they're building is the future of it's really interesting, of a common data set, open and available to everybody. And it's almost like the Fromm collective unconscious. Now I'm pulling shit out my ass from college, okay? It's kind of like creating a collective knowledge across space and time that everybody is going to have access to.
I was going to save this for the next. It sort of plays into the thing. I don't want to get off this yet, but I just want to. My guest yesterday accused me of being too obsessed with this subject, but I want to tell you this. In 1857, you know what was invented? I'll tell you, toilet paper. Less than 200 years ago, we invented toilet paper. Now, okay, let me tell you this. In 1925, not that long ago, 100 years ago, only half of the houses in the United States had electricity. We didn't get to 95% until 1960. Now, look at what we have. Talk about Moore's Law with technology. This shit is moving faster than we can wrap our heads around. For 300,000 years, we hunted and farmed to try to stay alive. We all got around to fire, and when it got dark outside, we went to bed. Now, we are less than 200 years removed from the invention of toilet paper. And look at what we have. What do the
Yeah.
next 200 years hold? Who the fuck knows? You can't even conceptualize it.
But I can. Okay,
Oh,
but you can. Okay, because what you are is a data economy. It's a data, right? The ability to move, and what do we see for the future? The first thing is, you know, people of a certain political bent will say we have to make sure that we have an earth to live on, right? So we're going to see advances. I just invested in a startup called X Atoms, which is using quantum chemistry to go after pollution in water. Okay, we're gonna and the missions is these kids. I'm involved in this startup festival every year, so it's a whole different thing. I won't go down there.
Yeah.
But what do I see for the future? I see us, if we don't blow ourselves up and if we don't destroy the planet, if we don't do those things, right?
Yeah.
We are
Mhm.
looking at a world and where data is really hard to privatize. It is really, a lot of it is going to be very public. Stuff we give away, stuff they figure out, stuff they analyze, all of that. We're going to see tools to take over manual labor positions, which means we're going to be in an economy of thinking. We're going to be in an economy of, where the human brain is where, and I don't believe AI is going to take over the world, but it's going to take over a lot of jobs. It's going to take over a lot of functions. And between AI and robotics, we're going to see that happening, right? We're going to see all of that happen. So I picture a world in which innovation comes from the ability to synthesize data and to create processes and things for people. Okay, so that's how I see it. I see food and medicine getting better and people living longer, and that's going to be a whole nother part of the problem. And I think that we're going to also see a massive 200 years from now. Okay, you can write this down and check me on it in 200 years. I think
Yeah, we'll circle back on it.
I think we're going to see a massive movement to space to find places in the universe where we're going to expand. I think the stuff that they're doing at SpaceX, I think the stuff that so another one of these startups I invested in is working on doing communications in space, organizing space communication. So I think that what you're going to see, I think we're going to see a massive movement into space. I think we're going to see a transportation technology, and I'm just tasting that for later, right?
Yep.
So I think we're going to see a big move in transportation technology. I think we are going to see I think we're going to see a massive streamlining of the delivery of resources to people, and I think we're also going to see some challenges to capitalism, which in my opinion are a little sad. I'm a capitalist, obviously, um, and I think that that's going to hurt some of the social constructs
Mm-hmm.
that I think. So I think we're going to have some very new social constructs because, I mean, look at us. We've never met in person. We're having this conversation. When I started my business 26 years ago, no one do a video call.
I know.
Flash Gordon, Dick Tracy.
Yeah, no.
And
Yeah.
today I'm actually not a CEO. I have to admit it. I'm a Zoomer. I'm a professional Zoom guy.
Yeah.
Okay. I spend 5 to 8 hours a day on Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm able to communicate and contact and work with people. My company's, we have about 1,500 people, and we're in 46 states, and we're in 5 provinces, and then teams in other parts of the world. I mean, it's mind-boggling. If somebody would have told me this when I bought my first telephone answering service, "Hi, Dr. Jones's office," I would have told them they were insane.
Well, that's the
Yeah,
thing too.
no.
Like, it's not even the toilet paper comparison. When you were a kid, when I was a kid, I didn't get the internet till I was 16, which I think we're part of the last. I know that's insanity. And it was in a computer room, right in the house. So it's like you go to porn. I mean, you had to wait for everybody to go to bed, so you couldn't even use it for the thing you wanted to.
Well, yeah, because it's so slow and it's ridiculous.
Oh, it was awful. But speaking of, I like that you sort of set this up. Transportation technology. Well, look at you. How soon will we have flying taxis? Well, the FAA thinks it's going to be relatively soon because they just they set up the whole thing, the training program. They're talking about this shit. It is like the flying car. We're finally where the Jetsons are in Back to the Future. The FAA is on board. So they've approved of a new flying craft for the first time in 80 years. The last one was in the 40s, and it was the helicopter. So it's not as if they're willy-nilly approving things that fly. In setting up training programs. So the whole idea behind the air taxi is that it's battery operated, so zero emission on its surface. It can go 200 miles an hour, 100 miles, I believe, per battery charge. And they think this is, in the beginning at least, it's going to be taxi services that take care of this. They're going to try to launch a pilot program in 2028 at the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. But they say it's probably about 20 years away before we're all taking these things everywhere. Yeah. Gary, what do you think about these?
Well, I think, first of all, it's happening in China. China is already China. In China, they don't know. In China, they are already testing. They're doing a beta in New York right now in Manhattan. I think it's inevitable. The challenges that they have right now are technical. That include the batteries. If they get broken, they have a tendency to explode. So there's a reason why you can't bring these kind of batteries
in the air.
So that would be a bad thing. I would put that in the bad column. So I think that this is part of what we talked about. This is transportation. We need to move faster. We need to go from place to place faster. Now, I don't see Star Trek, transporters happening anytime soon.
Can't wait for that. That's what I'm waiting for.
Well, but really interesting, and we can talk about it differently. The universal translator isn't that it's a lot closer than you think, and that's a whole different thing, But I see the transportation need. They said a long time ago, you want to keep a populace down, you need to restrict their transportation and their communication. Well, communication has already expanded, and transportation is going to get faster. The ability to take an air taxi from my house in Philadelphia out to Long Island, where my daughter and her boyfriend live, is, if I can cut that 3-hour trip to 15 or 20 minutes, well, how cool would that be, right? And we've already got private airplanes. In New York, they're also looking at the helipads. So it's not like we have zero infrastructure for this future. And where they're testing it, where they've been testing it, is in drones. They've taken what were clunky drone technology of, talk about speed. When were drones introduced? 4 or 5 years ago, right? And now, they're everywhere. It's funny because we had a problem with getting internet somewhere, and I have a friend who's in the business. That's what the NFL uses. They take drones, they bring in the internet on the drones, and before the TV trucks are gone, the internet is gone, and it's all private internet, so that you can't steal the communications between teams and stuff. It's a brilliant use of these technologies. Again, we have to make sure that we're not crashing into each other. It's flight technology and keeping the air organized, I think, is really going to be one of the biggest problems.
This is why we need no humans driving these things. It needs to be the robots. It needs to be GPS. You know what I mean? We can't, because we get road rage. We get road rage. Can you imagine?
Air rage. You have air rage now. That's
all of a sudden you bump into somebody above a playground. You take out a kindergarten class. It's a fucking nightmare.
Well, does my right to bear arms include the right to have a machine gun turret in my air taxi?
Right.
I don't know. About half of us would say so. Yeah. I need an AR-15 on my air taxi because just in case. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, it's one of, like, the toothpaste is out of the tube, the way somebody told you to slow down.
Yeah.
Like,
it's like Uber. Like Uber. I just go on my app, I bring my air taxi, fly to Texas. I think it's great.
Yeah, I did too. So we last week we did a story about Waymo and all these other robot taxis that are going around. But the same thing in the article, like there was a bunch of Navy fellas who like sat in the front seat and tried to dick around with the controllers, and they got kicked out. But that's exactly what's going to happen here. We need to strap us in and don't let us touch anything, because it's going to be graffiti it's going to look like public transportation because humans are disgusting creatures.
Yeah.
You
All
have such
right.
a high, you have a high opinion of people, and I love that.
Well, here's the other thing.
Well,
Here's
they're
what,
real.
here's what I know. Dave Matthews' tour bus, like 15 years ago, dumped 800 pounds of shit on a water taxi below them in Chicago. You know why? Because we don't give a shit. So we're going to be throwing Coke cans out of this thing, hitting people in the head. Whatever humans can do to make something great awful, we're going to do it. So this is just why I sort of worry about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would party with you, cowboy.
I don't think I'm a nihilist because I think it's the most pragmatic thing to be. I think I just look at humans. We're gross. Anyway.
Yeah.
I think, look, we could do the news, I think, for the next 5 hours. I'd love to hear your opinions on stuff, but we got to talk about you and your likes and your wants and your needs when it comes to your favorite bands, music. And I'm sorry, those are the same things. Bands, movies, and
Bands
books.
and music.
Bands and music, the whole thing. Let's start with number one. If Gary wasn't a Grateful Dead fan, I'd be concerned. But obviously you are.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Grateful Dead fan. Tough week, with Phil passing away
Oh,
this
that's
week.
right.
The bass player from the Grateful Dead. And, one of the things I didn't quite tell you, actually, my real favorite band is Bucket Band Philly, which is my band. So about 9-10 years ago, after not playing for 35 years, I said, my wife and I are a blended family. We brought all 5 kids together. And when we got together, all 5 were in high school. So the alcohol we had to drink just to keep up with them was enormous. But all 5 of them went to college at the same time. And I said, what can I do that's really stupid? I said, I know. I'm going to start playing music again, and I'm going to do it in small bars for no money. And it's been the greatest thing ever. So, one of the greatest joys I ever had, I remember I played a show in my hometown, and we played a Grateful Dead tune, and it was the coolest moment. Really one of the it's one of the few videos I posted up there, and it was one of the coolest moments of my life. I like the Grateful Dead, and I've liked them. I actually was turned on to them. I went to their show back in my hometown years ago, but the real turning point for me was my freshman dorm. Kid across the street from me was playing an album called Europe 72, and I heard it over and I heard it over and I heard it over again, because we didn't have, if you wanted to wear earbuds, they were like huge headphones, and you had to stick it in. Basically, it had to hang over the stereo, right? So, but it was game changing for me, because it was not only the music, and the music is way more complex. And everybody thinks the Grateful Dead is a rock band. It's really a blues band. It's blues, and it started as a jug band. So getting that experience has been, and it was a great time, because I was in college. I was experimenting with things, and I was listening to the music that supported those experimentations, the Dead, the Doors, etc. And it really was a change in my life. And Jerry died. I saw him in his last set of shows, and Phil dying this week. These guys used to do acid with Timothy Leary in San Francisco, and just jam out, and they learned how to share. And I'm going to tell you, John Mayer is brilliant. He's bringing a whole new audience to these guys, because I have kids who love John Mayer, and so I brought my stepson to a Dead and Company show, because it was John Mayer. And now, when he's visiting, let there be songs to fill the air, man. It's a beautiful thing.
Let me tell you, I don't want to be the guy that like brings the show down at all, but this is what I mean about humanity. You look at the 60s counterculture, everyone's doing drugs, free love, Timothy Leary, the fucking Grateful Dead, Woodstock. Yeah, we're all together, we're all one. Let's have sex and do drugs and listen to music, and everything's going to be fine. And here we are 60 years later. It's awful. I thought this was the generation that was going to be like, we're going to fix it. We're cool. We're going to be cool now. Not cool. We're still not cool. What happened?
Every generation says that. But let's look at what the Grateful Dead did for the internet. Okay. Now you're saying Grateful Dead, internet. What the hell is this guy talking about? Well, let me tell you. They invented freemium. They didn't invent it, but the concept of freemium, where you go on the internet, you get to use something for free, and with the hopes that you'll buy something else. The Grateful Dead used to give away the music. They would let you tape it. They would encourage you to share tapes. They would give you the music for free in exchange for you buying tickets for their shows, buying their merch, buying their recorded albums. It was genius, and it was way ahead of its time.
Yeah, because Jerry died in what, 94? Something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah, so they
But
were
they were
early
doing
adopters.
this, they were doing that in the 70s. And
Wow.
and so this is, you know, so going back to your point, the last generation is not, or the current generation is not the crappy generation. Because if
Yeah.
you want to believe that, like, oh, millennials, Gen Zs,
Right.
the reality is, if you really want to know where the worst generation is, read Plato. When you read Plato's Republic, they didn't think that the next generation could keep their shit together any more than we think in future generations. So when you look at what is this utopian society that you sort of dream about as a teenager, it's more that as the 60s happened, so did communications. TV became better,
Yeah.
communications came better, and as it's the same thing we talked about briefly earlier. It's as we've gotten more information, as that stuff comes over us more, we're anticipating that it makes us better. But at the core of all this is our humanity. We can't forget that we're humans. And that, I think, is something to, and going back to what you just said, Eric, we're flawed. We're humans.
Horribly.
We are wired. We're wired because of our survival needs, our sexual needs. We're wired for that. Okay. And we haven't changed. There was the last of the great Caesars of Rome was a guy named Marcus Aurelius. And then we saw him in Gladiator. Okay.
Yeah, dumb it down for us. What movie was
Doesn't
he in?
look like Russell Crowe. Okay.
Yeah.
But Marcus Aurelius was the last of the great Caesars of Rome. And he said, once you understand the nature of a man, you can't get mad at the man for acting within their nature.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
We suck.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a reason why 50% of marriages end in divorce. We suck.
Yeah.
We do shitty things to each other. We're mean to each other. It's interesting because I'm in a business, call center business, where it's known for, big rooms of very unhappy people, drones, and one of our core values is being kind and likable.
Yeah.
Right? Just be kind to people, be nice to people. Like this, and this is the thing about politics today. And I know you warned me, don't go too political, but here's the thing.
You do whatever you want.
I can't help myself.
On a roll,
You tell
Gary.
it's
Good.
unscripted, right? But
Yeah.
this is the problem. The whole concept of America is based on respect of ideas, respect of minority or different ideas. Because of the communication systems of today, the fringes are louder than ever before. If you were in Montana living off the grid, nobody heard you. Yep. Even if you built that manifesto, nobody read it. Nobody gave a shit. Today, that manifesto gets consumed by technology, gets read into AI, becomes a voice of a movement that you can't control.
And we're wired for novelty. We're wired for the extremes, particularly when it comes to entertainment. So like the boring gray middle isn't going to get you to click. The shit on the far left and the far right is what excites you, and that's what pays the bills. So it's also like it's baked into our stupid lizard brains,
Well, and I think that is, as we talk about utopia. And look, I'm an old science fiction guy. I love science fiction. Look, listen to Grateful Dead, experiment with things,
get a little high, start thinking some weird thoughts. I know, that's what happens.
So let your mind go wild. But the idea here is that we as a society will always think there's better because we are wired as humans. We want better. And going back to the conversation we had back a few minutes ago, think about this. If we are building processes and things to do for us, and then you would think that we're going to have more time, because there's only one thing that we can't make more of, and that's time. You cannot make more time. Right now, we're living longer. okay, which brings its own set of problems.
Yeah.
But we can't create more time. So that to me is that's also part of the challenge. I mean, I think that, are we going to get more time to do pursuits of intellectual or physical, if you're more physical, for leisure? I don't think so. I think that there'll be more, it's the same thing. People think, well, I get a lot of email, right? So I'm getting a lot more data in, but I'm spending more time processing that data. I'm still working the same length of time. Now it's not sun up to sundown, right? Like the agriculture, and the wood farmer, the woodchucks. But the reality is that the question really is, and I think this is the question I don't even begin to have an answer to, is 200 years from now, what are we actually spending our time doing? If we have, what would work look like? Is it going to look like this, where we're hanging out, chilling out, having
Right.
cocktails in the middle of the afternoon? Who knows?
That would be
Okay,
great.
I'm not having cocktails,
I
but I'm
would hope
thinking
so.
about having cocktails.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I got them right behind me, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I lament all the time that we're in a marketing agency. I thought it was gonna be like Mad Men. I thought we are gonna have cocktails at lunch, sleep with our
It
secretaries,
is
take a
not
nap,
like that.
make some money. It is not. It's spreadsheets. It's spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So if we could go back to drinking all day. I'm
Apparently
for
that
it.
was just a TV show, which is really, yeah.
Well, now
sorry.
you sleep. Now you sleep with your spreadsheets. So
They're not very good
hey,
in bed. I'm gonna tell you
once
that.
you once you have a cell, you never go back.
I see what you did. All right, so you've gone from the Grateful Dead to a band that's a little more rock and rolly.
So
The Who.
the Who represents teenage angst. They represent. They still do now. They're 100 years old, and seeing Roger Daltrey with his shirt off, at the last time I saw him, wasn't really my favorite moment of life.
He's still trying though, which is nice.
Well, again, we're performing longer. We're doing more.
Yeah.
But the reality is that the Who's music. I'm a big show tune guy. I like a lot of the arts, and the Who's the first album and the first CD I ever bought was Tommy by the Who. And then I had a friend whose band called the Smithereens who redid Tommy.
I saw the Smithereens in concert, by the way. Just so you know, we're in the same plane here.
Well, that's it. So Jim Babjack, the lead guitarist, I got to play behind him when he did his first acoustic show. So I got to back him up. It was one of the greatest moments of my life, and I've known Jimmy for a lot of years. And I was there the night that the band got asked to tour with Petty on a Midwestern tour. And I mean, he's a great guy. Okay, I'll just say he's a great guy. He's got great kids, and I knew his wife, his old wife, and I know his current wife was lovely. And his old wife passed away, and he was, he wasn't a rock and roll guy. He was a man. He was the kind of man that you hope you can be if you're faced with something like that, right? So this music has always been the music of my life, and I was really introduced to them by my older brother. And he and his friend across the street used one of those 8mm cameras, and were trying to create a cartoon, of Tommy by the Who. And then the movie came out, and that sort of scuttles that idea. But their music was always storytelling. And one of the things as a CEO, one of the things I may not be that smart, but what I really do enjoy is telling stories and entertaining people and inspiring people and bringing them out with stories. You have Tommy, you have Quadrophenia, they were one of the greatest rock and roll storytelling bands ever.
Yeah. And they're not Led Zeppelin, but they are of the mold where you have an unbelievable frontman, you have a batshit crazy drummer, you have a lead guitarist that's doing wacky shit, the windmill, then they're destroying their instruments, destroying hotel rooms. And my larger point is I lament the days that we've lost of real rock and roll bands, and they're a real rock and roll band.
Today's world, come on. If you were to be that, you would be canceled.
You know,
Right now,
this is insane.
now I'm
Yeah,
not talking about Diddy. Okay, Diddy
right.
is a whole horrible
Yeah.
host of another thing. Okay,
Yeah.
but that kind of behavior
I know.
becomes out,
Yeah.
and I'll be to be honest. By the time I really got into the band, they stopped doing that. I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
never saw one of their shows where they destroyed their instruments at the end of the show.
Well,
Okay,
you
I've
get
seen the video.
older, and you know,
Well,
Yeah.
you get
Yeah.
older and you realize that shit
It's
cost a lot of
sensible, yeah.
money. So,
exactly.
Yeah. Like,
you
we
know,
keep doing this. We're gonna be broke.
But you talk about like how human behavior, like we're shitty and we do shitty things and people are surprised by it and why. Dave Grohl is the classic example of this. The man just had a baby outside of wedlock and everybody's like, what? What do you think rock and roll drummers
Yeah.
do? They have children outside of wedlock and they do. Well, they used to anyway when the world was a better place.
don't tell that to my wife. She definitely doesn't want to hear that rock and roll drummers are having children out of wedlock. Okay,
I'm going to get you on
know, I mean,
23andMe and I'm going to have all your kids on here next time. It's
Yeah.
gonna be
oh,
big
We'll
family
do a whole
reunion.
show on that.
that's a story not for me, but that was a story in of itself. I've heard a lot of people who do those kind of DNA tests and get
I
very
know.
surprised.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
This is,
they
I think
find
about this a
relatives
lot
they
too,
never
just in
knew.
terms of the world. Okay, Dan Quayle, remember he misspelled potato, and that was enough to disqualify him for public office. Meanwhile, Axl Rose is fighting people and causing stampedes and shit at Guns N' Roses shows, and that's rock and roll. Today, Dave Grohl has a kid outside of wedlock. He's canceled, and our politicians do the most evil shit in the world. So we used to hold politicians to a very high standard and rock and roll to a very low standard, and we flipped it. Now musicians have very high standard. Don't you go sleeping with people if you're married in a rock and roll band, and politicians can get away with it. It's a weird, few years.
Should I run for president?
I think now's the time.
I would, yeah.
Yeah.
You throw your hat in the car. There you go.
Puddles 28.
Puddles 28. I'm with you.
Oh, yeah.
Because you know what?
Probably a
By
little
then
too
I'll
soon
be
now.
in my late 60s. I'll be the right age.
Right. Right.
You and Roger Daltrey. That's the ticket. I'm telling you. All right. Your next band. I think this is going to be, oh boy. I just love that there was a time and place in the United States where this is, rock and roll. Look at them. Look at Garfunkel there. Why do you love Simon and Garfunkel?
Yeah.
So one of the coolest shows of my life was my birthday, and I forget the year. My wife and I went to Japan. We get off of the it's the only time I've been to Japan, and we get off the plane, we go check in the hotel, and we go to the Tokyo Dome for a Simon and Garfunkel show. So and Simon and Garfunkel was really a representative of the 70s folk singers.
Yeah, I should clear up. You gave a bunch of these.
Yeah.
At Stevens, you like the
Croce,
70s folk stuff.
Stevens, Chapin.
Yeah.
There's a whole group of storytellers. Back. There's a theme. They're storytellers. They are, and one of the things. Okay, and I've recently started to sing again. Well, I say again, I used to sing in the high school choir. And now that I'm playing in an acoustic band, I started to sing. And this is the music that I keep pushing myself to, which is tough because I like when I play drums and I like to perform, I like high energy music. We're doing Psycho Killer. We're going to do, so we have a show a week from today and we're going to do a Psycho Killer. And we're doing everything from Lizzo and Dua Lipa to The Doors and the Dead and Talking Heads. We're a true cover band, no question about it. But this music, it's music that speaks to me, and when I sing it, right? So the songs that I sing with the acoustic band, are Dead songs, Chapin songs, Croce songs, Simon and Garfunkel songs. I sang Father and Son, and my keyboard player, who is also my chief of staff, who doesn't give me So here's the deal: at work, I'm the boss. On stage, he's the boss. Okay.
Yeah.
So anything I give him at work, I get back on stage. And I sang Father and Son. And he turned to me and said, "That may be your signature song." Okay. Now I'm almost over the fact that he said that because he's one of the most talented musicians. I play with some insanely talented people, like people whose whole life has been music, and they work so they can play music, right? Whereas I play music, I play music as a release. So I love the stories that these guys tell. Feeling Groovy, Father and Son, All My Life's a Circle by Chapin. These are songs that tell stories that make you feel something. And I feel like I'm Reba McEntire on The Voice. When you are
You
a
look like it too a
singer,
little bit.
yeah, you know what? I have no hair. But when and that's one of the things. It was interesting the other night after practice. I was singing a song that I love, and with the guitar player, no drums and anything, and a dead song. And my female lead singer turned to me. She goes, "You need to do that. Do that at our next show." And I'm like, "Wait, but there's no drums. I have nothing to hide behind," and so it's the storytellers that move me
Mm.
and move people. And it's the melodies and that kind of stuff, but it's really funny. But the melodies tied to a good story or a good lesson,
Mm.
right? I mean, I laugh because I love this song called "Perfect Day" by Hoku. Now, who's Hoku? Hoku was the Hawaiian singer Don Ho.
Yeah.
I think it was Don
Mhm.
Ho's
Yeah.
daughter.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
Don Ho's daughter, and I saw her perform with my kids
Yeah.
at one of the first things we ever did, where we brought my kids and my girlfriend, now my wife's kids, together. We went to this radio station show, and that song, "Perfect Day," like
yeah.
that's going to be the song behind my eulogy, not the day
Right.
I die
While
will
you're
be a
doing your
perfect
act.
day.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's kind of the mindset that I bring. So stories and
Mm.
feelings that come out of music, and these '70s guys that they tell stories. There's a song you want a good cry. There's a song by Harry Chapin called "A Better Place to Be," and
Mm.
it's a song about this bartender, this guy who goes into a bar. He's not some good-looking guy, and he picks up some girl, takes her back to her hotel, and all of the feelings that he feels in that whole experience. I mean, it's just an incredible song. It's not quite music to slit your wrist by, like David Gates and Bread. But it's a real moving, emotional song.
I think if you like storytelling, singer-songwriters are the way to go. And I think everyone should have a singer-songwriter that they're really into. Mine is Warren Zevon, and he's a storyteller, but it's a little weirder, a little darker. He's a strange
He
fellow.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
We do Werewolves of London, of course, and we've done
Yeah.
Lawyers, Guns, and Money,
Ah, great.
and in fact, our general counsel at one of our shows got up and sang that. It was perfect.
Beautiful.
It's
That's a very businessy song, Lawyers, Guns, and Money, right?
right, right.
Right.
Well, and I'm a lawyer, so he sang it, and
Oh, that's
it
right.
was
Yeah.
great.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
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 Well, let's do this. We're gonna get shut off at the hour. I think we should have you back on to talk about your
Yeah. To
movies
be
and books.
continued. Gary, to be continued.
We got to do a part two.
I have to tell you, this is one of the most fantastic times I've ever had doing something like this, talking about the news and talking about the future.
It's great, right?
These are things that I never get to talk about. So this is really,
You're very
really
good at it. So in the last
Yeah.
2.5 minutes, do you want to do a little AnswerNet thing, a teaser,
sure.
elevator pitch?
And quick pitches are this. First of all, AnswerNet is a full service BPO outsourced contact center company. We own telemarketing.com. So we do telemarketing, we do customer service. We're also very big in compliance. So we do a thing called third party verification. So when a consumer buys something from one of these hard sellers, we have a group that will come in and record the consumer, make sure the consumer knows what they bought. We do the biggest stuff, and we also are one of the largest telephone answering services in the United States. We also just recently launched so I was part of the team that brought texting to the United States. So we've just launched a new product called Text My Business. So all the phone numbers that you currently use, we can text enable, and we can give you a software so that you can communicate. I hate text marketing. I'm just going to say it out there, but I'm talking about communicating, because you guys want to communicate via text. You don't want to talk to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't want to have a conversation, but you need to be able to communicate. And we're helping move that along. So any place where you need people or technology to communicate with others, that's where AnswerNet can help.
Beautiful. And if we want to see your band, where can we
Yeah.
go?
Yeah. What are the tour dates of the shows?
So rather than give dates so that this will live forever, we are Bucket Band Philly and Fun Size on Facebook. So if you want to find us, you can find us on Facebook at Bucket Band Philly and Fun Size And wait, real quick, I see we have a few minutes. So the fun size story is my lead singer is about 4'10", and we were doing a show, and the guy in front of her was 6'2", and she walks up to the mic and looks up at the mic, and the guy goes, "Oh, you're short." She goes, "I'm not short. I'm fun size."
Nice.
And that's how we got that name.
Nice.
Fun size. Are they both cover bands?
They are. They are. Yeah, nobody wants to hear about CEO angst. I don't
don't have
understand why.
Well, I think that'd be a good story, though. I don't know.
Today.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, listen, Gary, you're unbelievable. Thank you so much. Please, are you going to do a part 2? Can we commit to a part 2? So we can talk about the
I'm
rest of it?
committed.
All right.
This is really the most fun you can have with your clothes on.
Well, I'm not wearing pants, so speak for yourself. All right. I'm going to log off the live. Gary, do me a favor. Can you stick around the green room for a couple minutes just so we can chit chat about the Sixers and how terrible they are? We will be back. I'm not sure tomorrow, next week. Who knows? It's a fluid situation. Anyway, enjoy your Wednesday, America.